So it's going to be something else, this 2016 election. You already have, the loons coming out of the woodwork here. You got the clown car over on the Republican side. Of course, on the Democratic side, you have Hillary Clinton, which is she's going to be a tank. I mean, the Republicans need to be prepared to realize that she is going to raise a tremendous amount of money. And remember, because of the Citizens United Supreme Court ruling, these candidates can raise as much money as they want to through super PACs, and they have access to literally unlimited amounts of money. And there was a story that came out, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, it was the Washington Post, and by Philip Rucker and Jenna Johnson. Large GOP field has party leaders anxious about their chances in 2016. Quote you a little bit here. To take back the White House after 8 years in the political wilderness, Republicans think they must soften their image and expand their appeal, in particular to women and Latino voters. As Jeb Bush, a leading presidential contender, puts it, we are going to win if we show our hearts. Party officials are growing worried about the wide-open nominating contest, likely to feature a historically large and diverse field. By the way, I think it's like 19 different candidates is what they have said. Fox News, who is hosting at least one of the presidential debates, they've come out with new rules. I mean, this is really insidious. They've come out with new rules that say that in order to be on the stage to debate in the GOP debate, you have to be in the top 10 of the national polls. The national polls that they recognize. The person who probably needs to be president of the United States is probably an unknown right now, right? But instead, what we have to put up with are these Donald Trumps, these Jeb Bushes, these people with massive name ID. And you think about it, with Citizens United basically freeing the amount of money that people can spend on their political candidacies, who wins in a case like this? Fox News says, in order for you to be on our stage to debate in our debate, you have to appear in the top 10 in a national poll. So in other words, you have to be one of the top 10 highest nationally rated presidential candidates in a national poll as recognized by us. Now, who does that benefit? That benefits the mainstream media. Because now, instead of going out and meeting with the people and going face to face, you better be getting on cable news. You better be constantly getting your ads out there. You need to buy lots of media. I mean, this whole thing is rigged. The mainstream press is basically setting the rules now, saying, well, with Citizens United saying that you can spend billions and billions of dollars, well, let us tell you how you have to get into the debate. You have to have massive amounts of national appeal, which is going to require advertising on our station. You've got to be kidding. I mean, you got to hand it to these guys. What a complete joke. Well, anyway, Washington Post, in this article, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. You need to read it. It's interesting. The large GOP field has party leaders anxious. In essence, these Republicans are going to be beating up on each other, and the money that's coming into them is going to be diluted, right? So you have Jeb Bush, and you have Rand Paul, and you have Marco Rubio, and you have Ted Cruz, and you have all of these guys running for office, and they're all going to get some of the money. But over on the Democratic side, you have Hillary Clinton, you have Martin O'Malley maybe. It sounds like he's going to run. And then you also have Bernie Sanders. And I tell you this, it's going to be very interesting to see if Bernie Sanders actually makes it to the debates, the national debates. I remember back whenever Ross Perot? He was in one of the debates, a couple of the debates there, I guess, a couple of years or a couple of cycles in a row. And he brought up things that made people think. And I think Bernie Sanders has that Ross Perot-esque kind of persona in the fact that he's going to be asking questions that many people have not been faced or have been, not been faced with or even thought of. In fact, the big banks are scared to death of Elizabeth Warren possibly running, although she's not planning on it. And of course, Bernie Sanders. I'll give you an example. Bernie Sanders is a Democratic candidate for president, obviously, for 2016, but he is currently a senator from the state of Vermont. And one of the things that Bernie Sanders has recently stated is that he would like to see college tuition be free for the average American citizen. And, of course, the question comes, well, how do you pay for it? And here was Bernie Sanders' answer. He said, we're going to levy a tax upon financial speculation on Wall Street. On Wall Street, right? So you want to pay for college tuition? Well, just tax at a very small percentage some of the transactions that go on in the derivatives market and in much of this financial speculation that occurs on Wall Street. Whoa, right? That the average American hears that, they're like, well, hey, let's stick it to the banks and let's get free tuition. Are you kidding? Who's not going to be all for that idea? Except who? The bankers. And then, of course, whoever the bankers can, convince. And they typically use their standard outlets. I mean, they'll use Wall Street Journal, they'll use Fox News, they'll use all the typical outlets that they use to say, oh no, that'll kill business and that'll be a really bad thing. Of course, right? That's what they'll do. They always do that. But it's actually a brilliant idea. Now, I'm not saying that we should do that, but what I'm saying is that is a brilliant idea that the American people have not thought of. They typically think, well, we can't afford that because we have to take money away from something else that's important. Well, financial speculation in derivatives is not that important, is it? It's being done by people most of the time who are trying to exploit the financial system for their gain. So levying a tax upon that kind of derivative speculation and being able to raise billions and billions and billions of dollars from that activity to pay for college tuition, that scares the bejesus out of the big banks, right? They're like, holy cow, that's too smart. That's too populist. Because if the people hear something like that, they're going to say, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do that. And so they don't want any of those kinds of ideas in the debate, right? They don't want to talk about the Fed. Remember, they didn't talk about the Fed at all in 2012. They don't want to talk nobody talking about the Fed. Don't bring up the big banks. Don't talk about how they need to be broken up, which is another thing Bernie Sanders is going to bring up and has long been talking about. These banks that are too big to fail, and yet now, in 2015, they are 30 to 40% larger than they were back in 2008, whenever they crashed the first time and we had to bail them out. So Sanders is going to be bringing up some very important things that, many people, I think people are going to be stunned by Bernie Sanders. That's my prediction here. I think Senator Sanders, if he actually shows up at the debate, and I'm telling you, I would not be surprised if he goes down in an airplane crash before this debate. I kid you not. I would not be surprised if something happens to him because his voice is the kind of voice that the banksters hate. They literally hate guys like him and like Elizabeth Warren and like Ron Paul and like Dennis Kucinich. And just think about some of the gadflies that exist in Washington. These people who you cannot buy, right? You just can't buy them, and they won't shut up. They won't stop talking about the things that really will take them down. So they're concerned. But the big money in the GOP is very concerned about the fact that all of the money that's coming into the GOP coffers is being diluted. It's either going into a Santorum pocket, or it's going into, a Jeb Bush pocket, or it's going into the pocket of Rand Paul's, groups, or whatever the case might be. Whereas on the Democratic side, who's getting most of the money right now? Well, Hillary Clinton. So by the time that the Republicans get done beating each other up with all of this money, whoever emerges victorious from the Republican side to battle Hillary Clinton is going to be coming in bruised, wounded, beaten up, and they're going to be facing a Hillary Clinton who so far really has little financial competition in fundraising competition from her opponents. And so the GOP is scared because they realize that no matter what happens, no matter who they nominate, that person is going to come out having spent a ton of money trying just to get the nomination. And then they're going to have to face off against Hillary Clinton, who is already pretty much the preeminent candidate on the Democratic side, who will have raised a lot of money and will probably not have to spend nearly as much to clinch her nomination, obviously, as many of the GOP folks will have to do. So I'll put a link to that story on the show notes today. Lots of interesting stuff. So, just here we go. Here we go again. We're going to have this new presidential cycle. The debate starting in about 11 weeks, I believe, is what I read. We're going to start seeing the very first debate, and it's going to get starting. We're going to start seeing this go, and you know what? It's just going to be another one of these cycles